please join me in giving our Sedgwick County Commissioner Jim Howell a warm Pachyderm Club welcome.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's truly an honor to stand before this this group of people. Most of you are my friends. I know most of you, and it's just a great honor to be in front of you today. You know, I wonder why people would come and listen to me speak. I don't think I'm worthy, but here you are, so let's see if I can say something worth your time. I like this picture. Title of my talk today is Why Am I Here? Am I Really Making a Difference? I look back to my my initial interest in getting involved in politics. In my house, we call it the dirty P word. I don't like the word politician. I like the word public servant, and I actually that's how I view myself. It goes way back to about 12 years ago now, when I was challenged by someone to make a difference. Before I go any further, let me just say, I want to say thanks to John Todd for allowing me this privilege to be before you today. It's truly an honor. I do want to acknowledge my wife. If you don't know my wife, she's over here in the blue dress. I refer to her as my hot wife. I refer to her as my hot wife because I think she's pretty hot. And I think thanks to her, because without her I would not be here at all. She has helped me get elected. She has been beside me the entire time. She gives me free advice, which I appreciate most of the time. My family has sacrificed for me to be here as well. I've sacrificed money from my job. People think public service is rich. You know, I'm not a congressman to the U.S. Congress. People don't know that, and they think you make tons of money. And I admit, county commission salary is pretty nice, but as a state legislator, which I did for 4 years before this, I lost about $40,000 to serve the state of Kansas, and so it truly is a sacrifice to serve in that regard. And I thank the legislators for serving, because it's not easy. As I said a minute ago, someone challenged me to get involved in politics, so here I am. I am truly excited to be a county commissioner. I'm going to talk more about that in just a few minutes, but there's been some things in the news. I'm sure you guys are aware we have a new manager. That is an enormous accomplishment for the Sedgwick County Commission. And if you haven't seen the picture, I'm sure you have. Michael Scholes. If you don't know him, I'm sure you don't yet, but I'm looking forward to you getting to know him. He's a fantastic person. He's got a tremendous resume. He's got the education. He's got the experience. He is a general in the Army. I'm sure you guys have seen his resume by now. Most recently, he served in the Kosovo forces as the Chief of Staff of NATO headquarters. Pretty impressive. He's built organizations from the ground up, and he's been given many missions. He's mastered them all, and I just think that he's a tremendous guy, and I'm looking forward to having him lead this county. Well, with that, I just wanted to mention that. Richard Ranzow spoke last week. Who was here last week to hear that speech? Man, oh man, was it awesome. If you haven't heard the speech yet, and by the way, I wasn't here because my wife and I were celebrating our 25th anniversary. And I would have liked to have been here, but we were having more fun, believe me, somewhere far away, and it was wonderful. But while we were gone, Richard Ranzow, I think, did one of the most amazing speeches I've ever heard. In fact, I came back and I had people tell me, man, you did this on the wrong week. Following Richard's going to be impossible. And I agree. I went and listened to the speech 3 times. And if you've not listened to the speech, let me just tell you, the Pachyderm Club does have a YouTube channel. So all you have to do is go to YouTube and look for Pachyderm Club. You'll find that very easily. Then look at the list of videos there. You'll find Richard Ranzow. And it's 44 minutes long. It's worth every second. He said some things that I just find very inspiring. In fact, he talked about how he got involved in politics, and I would say I'm kind of very similar. You know, I didn't know him at the time, but he talked about how he was, watching Fox News, listening to the radio and TV, getting frustrated with what's going on, especially in the military, especially in the federal politics. And then he felt challenged to get involved, and so he began reading lots of things like James Madison and other books, and defining his principles. And I guess I kind of went on the similar path. I sat back in my armchair getting very frustrated about what's going on in the nation. I had very little awareness of what's going on locally. And as I thought about what can I do to get involved, I got to, I was a bit aware of the state politics, but I didn't know how to get involved. And so I started asking people, what can I do? Where can I get involved? And I started studying things around me. I decided getting involved in the state legislature was probably the best first step for me. And so I did that. There was a lot of things in the State House I thought needed a lot of help. This is back in 2010. The state really made a big turn away from the Kathleen Sebelius era, Mark Parkinson era, to a Republican governor. We took 55 seats in the House. And 2 years later, we took the Senate. Republicans became in control of, I know technically they had control of both, but not really. If you know what I'm talking about, there's more than one kind of Republican out there. And so I got involved in a lot of really amazing things. We fixed our CAPERS program, not totally, but we took a huge step in the right direction. I was able to vote for the biggest tax cut in history of the nation, the historic tax cuts of 2012, income tax cuts. People think, well, that was a big failure. I don't agree. I think that it's working. There's a lot of data out there. We can analyze different numbers of different ways, but it takes time for this stuff to work. You got to set policy in place, and you have to let it work for a while. And so I'm privileged to work to have voted for that. I got involved in some of the pro-life issues. Our state, in my opinion, was one of the most pro-choice states in the nation, and now I think it's one of the most pro-life states in the nation. I think we deserve a hand of applause on that one, okay? Things have really changed in regard to pro-life stuff. And I got personally involved in Second Amendment stuff. Kansas was one of the last states in the nation to approve concealed carry law. And thanks to Judge Phil Journey, who was a senator at the time, he had a great amount to do with that. But we didn't pass any gun laws after that from 2007 until 2012. We didn't pass any gun laws at all. The next gun law that passed was one that I actually wrote, which actually passed unanimously, I like to say. That passed in 2012. I can tell you the details if anybody wants to know. But let me go on with my slides here a little bit. Let me go back to Ranzau just for a minute. He talked about some ideology type things in his speech last week. He talked about the difference between Republicans and Democrats. The Republicans are slower to socialism and tyranny. I see that myself. I'm frustrated with what's going on right now in the nation with the Republican Party. It's hard to find a difference sometimes between Republicans and Democrats. I have some great Democrat friends, and our ideology is different. I can still love them and appreciate them, and we can have discussions and talk about the issues. But Republicans are evolving, and we're leaving some of our core values behind. And I think Richard Ranzau talked about that quite a bit last week. He talked about being a constitutional conservative. I would like to say I'm that. I know a lot of people who are in politics will call themselves conservatives, but they're not. I think there's different levels of conservative, and Richard Ranzau, I think, is an excellent example of being a constitutional conservative. I like to be more like him in that regard. A fiscal conservative, absolutely. I want to be that. He talked about the common good. Collectivism is a myth. That's something I pulled out of his speech. And then he did talk about needing courage to stand up and make a difference. And that's kind of ties into what my entire talk is about today. He said that as well. So again, there's some parallel ideas between his speech and mine. His is better, I promise you. Go back and listen to his speech. But I'm very, very pleased that he was able to give that talk last week. It inspired me, and I hope you go back and listen to that. Someone in this audience actually turned me on to the writings of Frederick Bastiat, and I actually have this on my desk in my office. If you come to my office, you'll see this on my desk, on my wall, and I think this is really inspiring to me, and I hope it's inspiring to you. Frederick Bastiat wrote a book called The Law, and in that book, it really kind of summarizes a lot of things that Richard Ranzau said last week and a lot of things I would like to say today. My ideology kind of falls in line with this. It says the mission of the law is not to oppress persons and plunder them of their property, even though the law may be acting in a philanthropic spirit. Its mission is to protect persons and property. And Richard Ranzau talked a lot about that last week. The purpose of the law, its mission is to protect persons and property. Furthermore, it must be said that the law may be philanthropic if In the process, it refrains from oppressing persons and plundering them from their property. This would be a contradiction. The law cannot avoid having an effect upon persons and property, and if in the law acts in any manner except to protect them, its actions then necessarily violate the liberty of persons and their right to own property. The law is justice, simple and clear, precise and bounded. Every eye can see it, and every mind can grasp it. For justice is measurable, immutable, and unchangeable. Justice is neither more than this, nor less than this. If you exceed this proper limit, then you attempt to make the law religious, fraternal, equalizing, philanthropic, industrial, literary, or artistic. You will then be lost in the uncharted territory in vagueness and uncertainty, and a forced utopia, or even worse, and a multitude of utopias, each striving to seize the law and impose it upon you. I would actually add one word to that list, the word entertaining. We see a lot of that in government today as well. We have government that sees that as one of its core missions, and that is to provide entertainment now. Bastiat asserted that the sole purpose of government was to protect the right of an individual to life, liberty, and property, and why it is dangerous and morally wrong for government to interfere with an individual's other personal matters. From this, he concluded that the law cannot defend life, liberty, and property if it promotes legal plunder, which he defined as using government force and laws to take something from one individual and give it to others. That's a summary, I think, of what Richard said last week. And I agree with that ideology. Now, Richard's not me, and I'm not Richard. And some people in the Eagle and otherwise have said, you know, these are rubber stamps of each other, and that's not true. Richard and I disagree on a number of things, actually. And if you'll notice, we've not voted together on everything, okay? I think he's a very smart guy, and I like him a whole lot, but we're not the same person, okay? Let's go on a little bit further. Y'all seen this picture? Eagle uses it all the time, it seems like. They've written so many articles about the county commission since January the 12th. I think that this has been one of the hottest topics of the Wichita Eagle since then. In fact, I can't remember very many articles before January of this year that focus on the county commission, but they have had a tremendous number of articles on the county commission because things did change on November the 4th of 2014. I don't want to take credit for all this stuff because it's really not about me. We talked about the Senate took the U.S. Senate became Republican in the last election. Although that may be true, they didn't really act a whole lot different. County Commission only has 5 members, and one person can make a big difference on a small board like that. And so my ideology was different than my predecessor. I was very clear with what I thought, what I believed with the people who elected me. I was not hiding behind anything. I said exactly what I thought, and I'm not shy to say what I believe. It resounded with the people, and they elected me with big numbers. And so I'm going to hold true to that. Some people aren't going to like it, but it's what I need to do. And so people ask me all the time, I want to go ahead and just talk about this real quickly because people say, well, how is this different than the legislature? And I do want to cover that real quickly. You know, the legislature, you're one of 125 in the House, and there's 40 members of the Senate, 165 members altogether. It takes 63 in the House, 21 in the Senate, and 1 in the executive branch to make anything happen. And in that regard, there's a lot of legislators that are up there pushing buttons that don't actually do anything outside of that. They vote, they attend, but that's pretty much all they do. And you know, there is a lot of things similar. There's a lot of things that are different. I did serve on a number of committees up in Topeka. One of the committees I served on was general government budget. We did a lot of cutting on that budget because, again, the state was looking at shortfalls of revenue. We had to find ways to cut. I found out after we got done with our work that the Appropriations Committee would usually restore most of the things we cut. And in County Commission, if we decide that we want to cut something, it takes 3 people. And it doesn't get overturned in a subsequent body. That's a big difference. In the State House, you serve on different committees. There's about 30 different committees in the House, about 20 different committees in the Senate. And in that regard, you get to be an expert on some topic. In the County Commission, you have to be an expert on every topic. And it's very diverse. You know, I served on federal and state affairs in the House, got to work on some gun stuff. I love that. We worked on pro-life stuff. I liked that. We worked on some commerce things. I didn't really care for that one too much. Okay? But you have to kind of know a little bit about some things, but you have to know a whole lot about a few things. County Commission, you have to know a lot about everything. Okay? So I think that if you guys know me, I ask a lot of questions. People get tired of me. They say, man, you ask too many questions. Lonnie, I ask too many questions, don't I? He gets tired of me, Don. He gets tired of me asking questions. You know, I can slow the process down. In the State House, you're going from committee to committee to committee. You're always rushed to get from one thing to the next. You're running, literally running from committee room to committee room. The State House, I would start very early in the morning and end up very late at night. My wife and I got along okay with this because I was there and she was here, and I could call her from wherever I was, and that worked out okay. But it wouldn't work that way now, okay? She wants me to be home once in a while, and I'm glad she does. So there are obviously some differences, but you know, the reality is in the county commission, we can slow things down. We can defer things. We don't have to do anything this week. We don't have a deadline necessarily most of the time. We don't have deadlines we have to hit. If we need some more time, we'll just defer something. If we're ready to move forward, we can make motions to move things forward. Last time I voted for a budget in the State House, I voted no. I'll tell you why. They did the same thing this year. They did the last session I was in. That was in 2014. I did not vote for the budget because they violated, in my opinion, my right to change the budget. They did not let that budget be debated in general orders on the floor of the House, which means I can't change anything. All we did was get a conference committee report, which is a combination between the House and the Senate positions, bring it to the House, and ask you to vote yes or no. You can't change anything in that package. I voted no because I think it violates my right to change the budget. I did vote for the previous 3 budgets. Do I like everything that was in them? Absolutely not. I never voted for a budget I liked. In fact, I don't know anybody who voted for a budget they liked. And I get criticized sometimes because I love Joseph Ashby, and he and I get along like a house on fire, and that's a good thing, okay? But he criticized me after my initial vote in 2011. He said, why did you vote for that budget? It had all this bad stuff in there. I said, hey, I did the very best I could. You know, I worked all session long, more than 90 days, to change that budget to the best I could make it. And at some point, you got to vote for something. Someone's got to vote that budget out. And there's people to the far right and people to the far left that would not vote for anything for various reasons. And I would like to be that person that says I'll vote no, but somebody actually has to pass a budget. And so you do the very best you can for as long as you can. At some point, you have to pass that out. So I did that, and I got criticized by some folks. And there's nothing wrong with that. I would love to have the opportunity to say no and let somebody else pass that, and there's many people who did that. County Commission, we went through a budget this little while back, and I know there's a lot of interest from the community this time. I'll tell you one thing I think people kind of missed, which Eagle apparently missed it entirely, and that is that we started kind of from a conservative position to create some dialogue. I wanted to understand why we spend what we do. And I had literally, I'm going to say, 100 conversations from different stakeholders on that budget, where I could ask them questions and understand their perspective, to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and challenge ourselves to verify what we're doing makes sense. You know, in the past, I think they had a manager's budget and walked in and said, yeah, it looks pretty good. I'll vote for that. And it was different this year. And I think this is a better process. We need people to stand up and actually understand what they're doing and ask lots of questions and be able to explain it. And although we did that this year, we got criticized by everybody. And it seemed like. I think some people understood that, but a lot of people did not understand that. So there's some similarities. There's obviously some differences. Which is easier? Well, again, I think it all depends. If you're me, I ask questions everywhere I go. I ask so many questions it drives people crazy. But in the State House, again, I became an expert on some subjects and became a novice in many subjects. Some things I had no idea, it seemed like. You can't possibly read the thousands of pages of material they hand you. So in that regard, the legislature is harder because there's so much more material. But you have to trust your colleagues and you have to trust your staff to tell you the right information. And so I would say in some ways that was also easier. The County Commission, again, I think I take this very seriously. I pour myself into this so much so that I don't think this is easy. This is not an easy job. I have had people tell me it could be an easy job. All you have to do is show up and go to the board meetings and do what staff tells you. And I'm not that guy. So if you're going to be Jim Howell and you're going to ask lots of questions and understand the deep issues, then it's not going to be easy. It could be easy, and I think there are some commissioners who've made it very easy in the past. Maybe you still do that, but I think there's a number of commissioners that are like me that want to know the details, and so I don't think it's really easier. I think in some ways it's just as hard as the legislature was. Let's go a little bit further here. You know, one thing I've noticed is again, I mentioned the Eagle because they've taken a serious interest in the county commission, and they have provided some art, which I thought was very humorous. I wanted to share that with you and remind you what they've done. Here's their first Krausen cartoon. I was in Krausen cartoons a few times before. Yeah, you like that one? I do too. They're asserting again that we're triplets, I suppose, but that's not true. We are very much independents. But I like this cartoon because, yeah, we are remodeling county government. It needs it. You agree? And the tinfoil hat doesn't make sense because I guess we're the most inquisitive group. We have the most information that I think of any county commission we've ever seen, and so we're not blindly doing anything. We're not ignoring the facts. We're simply becoming aware of what's going on. How about one more? Feeding time at the zoo. That was another one came out. Again, they're poking fun at us. We had I'll talk more about this later if I have time. We had a contract with the zoo, and it was set in 2013. They included a 45% increase in funding over the next 5 years. This year would have been a 7% increase. Next year, 8%. The following year would have been 6% increases back to back. So from 2013 to 2018 would be 2013 to 2018 would be a 45% increase in funding to the zoo. And I like the zoo. I think y'all probably like the zoo. I like it too, but it is entertaining, right? That's why we have the zoo. When they passed a funding agreement in 2013, it was probably because they assumed that the economy was going to get a lot better. By the way, that was on the tail end of the county cutting hundreds of thousands of dollars 2 years in a row to the zoo and to the exploration place. They had significant cuts, as well as a lot of other organizations. You don't remember hearing them in the news those years, did you? Back in 2012 and 2013, do you remember hearing big articles in the paper? Did they write cartoons like this back at the time? Not at all. You have to ask yourself, why are they doing that now? I always wondered that too. Okay, how about this one? Commissioner Peter John Ranzon Howell, this is how to do a county budget, making fun of us. Johnson County, new budget funds quality of life issues. They were funding things like the arts and the zoo and things like that, museums. They increased their property taxes 14% this year. I find that very troubling. I think we did it better, frankly. I wish the Eagle would agree with us, right? Okay, I do want to talk about this for just a minute because I was elected in November. I didn't take office until January the 12th. There was a lame duck session. This is just a small list of some things they did, okay? All this spending was out of the ending balances. Actually, the CAC actually was budgeted, but I think that's correct. I believe it was budgeted, but they made a choice, I believe, in December to give the Child Advocacy Center $1 million. They gave $5.3 million to the elephant barn for the Sedgwick County Zoo. They had made a previous decision in 2013 that the zoo would raise $10.6 million required to open up this elephant barn. Their fundraising was woefully lagging, and so they came to the county commission and asked for money, and the county commission obliged in December, I believe, of 2013, giving the Sedgwick County Zoo another $5.3 million right before I showed up. We got criticized, I think, since I've been there in January. We've had a couple of off-agenda items, and the paper was very quick to criticize us on taking off an off-agenda item. Did you all know they did an off-agenda item in January, right before I got there, the week before I got there, to spend $50,000 more for WATC? I don't know if you guys knew that or not. It wasn't in the paper, I don't think. At least it wasn't called an off-agenda item. They weren't criticized for that. We were criticized for that when I got there. They also decided to spend $4.9 million in change on what we call the 271 building. You all know it is the old IRS building over at the corner of 3rd and Waco. And this is a 6-story building that has 94,000 square feet. I'll talk more about that in just a minute if I have time. I need to move along a little bit faster here. So they spent a lot of money last December, or since last November, okay? This is one of the paragraphs that came out January the 14th, my first meeting, January the 14th. This is what the paper said. It says, nearly a 4-hour meeting, the commission reversed several decisions made last year. It changed the county's legislative platform, passed November the 19th, repealed some resolutions passed earlier, reduced funding for a health care program for uninsured residents, and voted against entering an agreement with the state for a $580,000 program to control and reduce health problems such as obesity, diabetes, and heart disease among its residents. We've done a lot since then. This is just the first week. It's been a lot of fun. Again, this is not about me. It's just because we have people, enough of us, I guess, that believe in the core values that Richard Ranzo talked about last week to actually make a bit of a difference. And this is truly has changed Sedgwick County. There'll be more changes ahead. We did change the platform. I don't want to go through this too much, but you know, Sedgwick County has a property tax, and if you ask Carl Peterjohn, he talks a lot about trying to get a county-wide approval for any increases in the mill levy. He's talked about that for a long time, and I think he's right. I support his idea. We did get that in the platform. We actually have a bill written. We'll see if we can get some traction on it this next year. Talked about we changed the language in the health department. I'm not going to read all that real quickly, but we changed kind of the focus of our health department, which used to be really more about preventing disease, promoting wellness, and protecting the public from health threats, it says. Now it's more oppose federal intervention from local health departments via health department accreditation, and strongly support legislation that prohibits state and local health departments from relinquishing control of their standards to anyone but the state legislature. You know, there's a movement going on to federalize everything, okay? The state of Kansas is what gives us our marching orders for health department. We do a lot more beyond just what they tell us we have to do. We make choices locally to do more than what's required, and it is very expensive. And I know you all know we cut a lot of money from the health department this last budget for next year, but you know, we're still spending, I think, $11.6 million in our health department next year. It's not like we're not funding the health department. We are. We do a lot of really important stuff and things that are required by the state of Kansas. But from reading the newspaper and hearing from the media, you'd think we defunded everything, and that's just not true. Okay. A couple more changes. We did put in our legislative platform to oppose illegal immigrants getting driver's licenses. That was in the Wichita City platform at the time. And we also did support the idea of moving the spring elections to the fall, which you know did happen. And we did work behind the scenes with our lobbyists and talking to legislators to encourage them to make that happen. And I think we were very pleased that did happen. Okay, other stuff. Let's talk about the 271 building for just a minute. I'm sorry, let's talk about the tag office real quickly. Tag office. You know, I have heard since I've been here, and I know this is really not our thing. People criticize the county commission for the tag office because they don't realize that it actually falls under the county treasurer's office, being that, and she's an elected person. Linda Kazire, nice person, but when they get to the tag office, they get frustrated. Who do they think of? They think of the county commission. So I take an interest in this topic. And if you guys know, this has been a problem for 17 years. People have been complaining about the Murdoch tag office and saying how horrible it is. We need to solve that tag office problem. So we did. We actually, the 271 building, which again, that was the original plan, was to move the tag office over there. But I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But that was a very expensive solution. And by the way, when they bought the 271 building, it wasn't to provide a tag office. That came as an afterthought. But we are going to solve the tag office problem, and we're going to use a process called a request for proposal, or RFP. RFP says to the community, hey, show us some ideas. Either build a building, find a space, and show us how we could use that for a tag office. Here's some of our requirements. We take in ideas, and we compare them against each other, and we try to negotiate one of the deals and see if we can get a good deal, with the attitude that we can walk away. Okay, we have to have the right to walk away. You ever buy a car? You got to be able to walk away. You'll never get a good deal, will you? And so what they did before was we picked a building first, negotiated second. And you lose all your negotiating ability when you do that. So the 271 building was an expensive building. It was overly large. They decided to put the tag office in that building after the fact. But the remodeling cost was so high that by doing this over, it's given us an opportunity to find a much better solution. we are moving towards a solution. You're not going to hear about it for just a little bit longer, but I'll tell you, we're moving towards a solution, and it will probably happen, I'm going to guess, in 2015. At least get started, okay? And we're going to save a lot of money, okay? And it's going to be wonderful. And I'm excited to the fact that we're using this RFP process. When I encourage my fellow commissioners to use an RFP process, at least a couple of them agreed, and we started the process. Well, about a week later, I got a call from our facilities people. I said, we're having trouble with this. We've never done this before. And they hadn't. People said, the Eagle made the argument that they had done an RFP for the 271 building, but what they actually did was did a competition to find someone to provide a service to the county, to represent the county in terms of buying that building. Okay? That was what they used. The competition just simply selected a realty company or a developer to represent the county. They did not use a competition to actually select a building. The county commission and the realtor worked together and just picked something, and they began the negotiation process and did not really have a lot of options on the table to compare side by side to see actually how they would work, okay? So we followed a new process, an RFP process, to find a building space, and I can tell you it's working a lot better, and I'm looking forward to seeing this be used a lot more in the future, and I think it's going to save a lot of money for the taxpayers, because again, when you get competition on the table, side by side, different ideas and different solutions, you can pick the best one for the taxpayer, best one provide the best services to the people. And so we're going to follow that process, I think, from this point forward, and I think it's been a tremendous learning experience, and it's been a good process so far. Law Enforcement Training Center, we've been talking about that, I don't know how long. I can think back to about the year 2000, I think this subject came up. And we've talked about it a lot since then. It's kind of come and gone, and people keep coming up with different ideas on what we can do for a training center. We can't seem to settle on anything. We're using an RFP process, again, for a Law Enforcement Training Center. You know what that does? It drives us towards an answer. We're going to have an actual decision and actually put this thing in place. It demands an answer. You do an RFP process. You said, what's the best options? And you get them side by side, and you have to pick one. Okay, so we're doing that right now, and we're in the middle of that process. And I would expect that in 2016 you're going to see a new law enforcement training center. So again, we're providing answers and solutions when previous county commissions are unable to get that done. We hear some criticism right now for the Metropolitan Area Building and Code Department and the Planning Department. We merged those together as an efficiency thing with the city of Wichita. Our builders, I think, like the idea. I like the idea. I think it's very popular, but they need a common space. And so we're doing that. We're doing an RFP for that process as well. Now, I know some people say, well, we bought a building to provide that space. Well, again, we're going to second guess that. I ask a lot of questions. I wanted to make sure that this is the best thing we can do. Take our time to do it right. And so the building we have right now is provide space for the MABCD and MAPD offices. Let me just tell you right now, they use 22,000 square feet in their current spaces. They had planned on, they feel like they need some more spaces, so they asked for 32,000 square feet. The building they purchased in October of 2014 was 94,000 square feet. That's about 3 times too large. And they bought that for about $9.4 million. I'll tell you what, if we really focused on the problem, you could have built a brand new building for less than $4.9 million. Okay? And so I think they really missed the boat on this deal. Then they had to justify it. So then they decided they wanted to move the tag office, the appraiser, ComCare, professional standards, et cetera, in addition to MABCD and MAPD into that building to fill it up. But that creates another problem, because if you add up the different customers that belong to that building, there's going to be somewhere between 650 and maybe more potential people in that building at one time. Each person's got their own car, and there's only about 250 parking spaces outside. And that's using parking spaces across the street. Just outside the building, there's 95 spaces. All the rest of that parking they identified is around the building and other places. You have to walk across the street to find these other spaces. And so I think I certainly had a concern about the parking. And driving towards a new parking garage, I think that would be the likely outcome at about $20,000 a space. You know where that's going. So I think, again, this is a tremendous mistake on the part of the county commission. I'll tell you that Richard Ranzau and Carl Peter John did not vote for this, but it was done nevertheless. But it's time for us to rethink the whole thing. When you add in the remodeling costs, they were initially thought of, and the interest on this decision, it's about a $17 million purchase altogether. Again, they had 22,000 square feet, 132,000 square feet, obligates the taxpayers for about $17 million. Do the math. I don't think it was a good deal. And so we did an RFP for this, and I think it's a much better answer. Now, we do have one option on the table right now that has come before us. I did mention we have an RFP for the MABCD and MAPD building, our offices, and that's still being done, and we're going to get that back pretty soon. But we do have we did ask for a paint and carpet solution for this building, just using the space they needed. And so they identified 3 floors, about 45,000 square feet, essentially doubling their square footage. And if we choose to go down that path, at the very least, it will save us about $8 million. So we've already identified some tremendous savings. And that is very exciting to me. Okay, so what about some other stuff? There's some other things, by the way. Thanks to the Wichita Eagle, I had to go back and read a lot of articles because there's been so many things we've been involved in. I couldn't remember them all. I'm trying to brainstorm. What all have we done? We did split up the Board of Zoning Appeals. People say, well, why are you doing that? You're ruining your relationship with the city of Wichita. Well, they made some decisions I didn't like. And to the extent that there are a lot of city people on these boards, they have kind of a city mentality, and they're doing some decisions that are best for the city. We have people on the county that live out in the unincorporated part of the county, and they ought to be represented by people who understand the county mindset. So nothing wrong with having 2 different BZAs. There's nothing wrong with it. There's actually no efficiency to be gained by putting this together. We're not saving a dime to put them together, okay? But I would suggest by having these separate, it actually provides a more focused board on the things that come before those boards. So if you live in the city, you can go to a city BZA. If you live out in the county, go to a county BZA. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Judge Riddell Boys Ranch was closed last July. I think it was a huge mistake. We continue working on that, though, trying to find a way to solve the need for that type of a service. And we did find a similar way to do this that we're hopeful is going to work. We carried the name over. It's called now the Judge Riddell Boys and Girls Alternative Program. And we're going to take services to these kids in our facilities or in the residential facilities in their own homes, wherever they happen to be in the county, not just some kids at our facility, but kids at all of the facilities. Salvation Army, for example, Lakeside, and other facilities as well. So we're going to provide services to them wherever they are. The idea, again, is if you provide these services on these kids, as a conservative, you're saving money. Because if you have an effective program, then these kids don't go to incarceration. And by the way, we don't know that they work, but this new program requires performance measures. We have to verify that it works. If it doesn't work, we're not going to do it, okay? But we're hopeful it does work. I believe it does work. We've got data from Wichita State University, is in a couple studies, that we know that Judge Riddell Boys Ranch, based on the data we have right now, it was very effective and it did work. And so we'd like to reinvent that and do that again. And as a conservative, as a fiscal conservative, I can get behind it because I think it not only does it help a kid, it's some kind of a moral decision, but it also does save money. And we're going to verify that with performance measures. We talked about ComCare. That made a huge story. We talked about, can we privatize any part of ComCare? It's a huge organization. One of the biggest parts of county government is ComCare. We spend a lot of money providing services through ComCare, and they do lots of different things. A lot of them are done through vendors that provide services administered by the county, basically contracts with them, and they provide services. We're trying to find is there any way to streamline this and make this more efficient, effective, affordable, provide better services to more people? Aren't those good questions? Should we not be asking that question? I think we should. Don't you agree? I think so too. Boy, that created quite the stir. People think we're going to be cheap and we're going to disservice all these people that are dependent on our services. And that's never been the goal. The goal is to find what we do, make sure that it's efficient, effective, it's the best, most affordable way to do it, provides the best services to the greatest number of people. That's always been the goal, a collective goal, if you will, all those different ideas. We did identify some land that I think when the government owns property that you don't need, get rid of it. Turn it back to the taxpayers, right? We identified some land that was serving no purpose, and so we decided, you know what, let's just get rid of it. We sold that, more than $4,000 an acre, and made over $1 million, $1.3 million for the taxpayers, just to get rid of that land, and that will help us in the future. Zones of influence is an issue we're dealing with right now, trying to streamline the way that people who live around a city. I use the word small city. If you live around Derby or Mulvane or Goddard or Keachai or any small city and you live around that city, It's a very convoluted process. You have to go through 2 separate hearings and have 2 different presentations and have two different boards have to agree to let that project go forward. And if they don't agree, it's going to go to the Board of County Commissioners, has to have a unanimous vote, the Board of County Commissioners, to overturn a appointed member of some planning commission. So maybe imagine it's a controversial issue and you have a 9-member board and if something gets turned down on a vote of 5-4. You have a single appointed person who can control the outcome of that event, and the only way to overturn that is a unanimous decision of the Board of County Commissioners. I find that very troubling. So we're going to visit this issue. We're working on it right now. I know Richard talked about the bait shop last week, how silly that is, but it's an issue, okay? We get involved in all kinds of things. The bait shop last week he talked about last week, we decided to sell bait again. Not that we should be selling bait, but we're already there, and as a fiscal conservative, we ought to be trying to lower the cost of the taxpayers. Without selling bait, it actually increases the cost of the taxpayers because we're not going to, we're in the lake business, and if people can buy bait, then they'll want to go there. And so by having a bait shop actually functioning, it actually lowers the cost to the taxpayers. We did actually lower the solid waste fees. You didn't hear about this at all, I don't think, anywhere. I don't think it even made the news. But we lowered the solid waste fees because we saw we have an account that's growing beyond what we need, and we decided to lower the fees. And I think that's what you want in your representation is, watch those accounts. Don't take more from the people than you have to take. Just keep those fees as small as possible. We did reduce the mill levy in the last budget that passed. It wasn't very much, but what the intent of that was to return the mill levy back to the 2010 level. And if you don't know, the process we have to follow by state statute, we pass a budget that has a dollar figure, and then when they calculate the mill levy after the appeals process is all through, the assessed valuation for the entire county will change a little bit, and so when they calculate the mill levy, it's different. And generally, it creeps up just a little bit. And so it went up over a period of five years. And we wanted to reset that back to zero so we can get rid of those miniature little increases that no commissioner voted for and return it back to what commissioners actually intended in 2010. So we did lower the mill levy. It wasn't really about returning $1.30 to the $100,000 home, but it was based on principle. We took a lot of heat for that, but I think that we're again try to be mindful not to let the mill levy creep up, because that is a tax increase, and we're not really voting for tax increases, but it continues to happen every single year. So we're going to start paying more attention to that and making sure it doesn't go up every year. We did reject some grants that that do nothing of value. People say, "Man, you're rejecting grants. Why would you do that? That's our money. Get it back." Can you imagine taking a grant and just catching that money on fire and let it burn? Who would do that? It's silly, isn't it? Well, to some extent, taking federal money that's borrowed from Chinese or other governments or borrowed from your great-great-grandchildren or printed out of thin air and burning that cash on something that has no value is silly. And so we got to be very careful and vigilant to make sure these grants accomplish something really good in our community, something we would do with our own money. And if they don't, then we shouldn't accept the grant. So I think we need to be more careful. We have rejected some grants. And if you guys think that's the kind of representation you want, then that's great, because that's what we're doing. We're being very careful. I have dug in on this issue of healthy babies a little bit. I think my colleagues agree with me a little bit. We actually have a program that's intended to do something really good, but it's inefficient and it's ineffective. It doesn't work. We're actually spending $2 million on a healthy baby program. We decided to reduce that by $75,000 as property tax dollars. We got rid of one person out of 23, 24 people in that department. And the community, I think is in an uproar about this because they think we're not supporting a program that they like. But this program is only helping a few people. It only helps 1/32 of the population. And if you understand the way the program works, its purpose is to lower infant mortality. It's impossible. The way the program is structured, they cannot lower infant mortality because of the way the program is structured. They may, by one person, potentially every 4 years, potentially change that number by one every 4 years. In the meantime, you're going to see about over 300 other babies die because we're not dealing with the situation in an effective way. We did get involved in gun policy. Believe it or not, as a state legislator, I got to help write the bill and help pass. I carried the bill on the floor, and I love that bill. It's in my office. Come see it. I love this bill, but House Bill 2052, the Public Building Security Act. I get to be on the other end of that now and say, you know what, let's open up our buildings. Let people protect themselves, because I really believe in the Second Amendment. We're not quite done yet. We've got a few more buildings to work with right now, but we're still working that issue. We've opened up every building, very few, just a few exceptions to people the right to defend themselves. All right, thank you. I'm just about done here. I am going to take a couple questions. You guys can read the slide for yourself. People have said this process is transformational. I agree. I didn't pick that word, but somebody else did, and I like it. It just says we're doing things better, and we're asking more questions. We're doing this with more thought. We've done a lot of things with trying to move away from debt. We have more principled approach to running the county. We're using more fiscal common sense. Let me just say one thing real quickly. The budget overall, I mean, it does contain some moral aspect of the budget. There's things inside the budget I find morally wrong, things I really like, but it's a compilation of a lot of ideas. In itself, it's not really a moral document. But what we like to do is move that ball in the direction you like the very most, as much as you possibly can. Again, I said I voted for budgets in Topeka. I did the very best I could for a whole session, trying to put the things in the budget that I thought were the very best things. At the end of the day, you got to pass a budget. So this budget was not a perfect budget. I didn't like this budget. I don't think anybody liked this budget. Richard Ranzau didn't like the budget. Carl Peterjohn didn't like this budget. My other two colleagues didn't like this budget, I'm sure. Nobody liked this budget, right? But we did the best we could. We moved the ball in the direction I thought was the best. We found 3 votes. We got it done. And there's some things in that budget. You guys can read those things. I don't have any more time with that. And let's see here. Whoops, I missed a slide. There we go. There's more work to do. Through 2020, this is a statement that was in the newspaper. It says, through 2020, the county is projected to spend another $37.4 million, more than it brings in, based on current practices. The report said, the good news here is that we are not projecting insolvency anytime soon. Well, I'm concerned about that. We're not done yet, guys. We got more struggles ahead of us. We got the ball in the right direction a little bit, but there's more work to do. And we need to work on our city-county partnerships. Although the media has made a big deal about this, trying to say how much we're destroying our partnerships, I think that's ridiculous. We've extended the olive branch to them more than they have to us, and that's the truth. We did defund a few things that affects the city, but you know what? I can explain them. They're understandable, and I've explained them to the city council members. You know, there's some things they're spending money on that, frankly, we don't agree with at this time, and we'd like to pull away from that. So it's not like we're trying to be mean. We're not trying to destroy our partnerships. We just don't agree on some stuff. And if they want to do it, that's fine. But we're going to continue to try to develop partnerships with the city of Wichita. And by the way, there's other communities out there. We want to just not focus on Wichita. We want to focus on every community. And by having a new manager, we're going to hopefully promote a better perception, I think, for Sedgwick County. We need a cheerleader to talk about the good things. There's been so many people talking about the bad things that you forget the fact that Sedgwick County, I think, really is a poster child across the country, not just in the state of Kansas, but everywhere. We've got a tremendous county, and there's a lot of good things to say about it, and we can make it better. Let's become cheerleaders for our own county. And with our new manager, that's one of our biggest goals, I think, is to cheerlead the great things about our county. And we're going to continue to make a difference. So I'm going to stop right there. We have a few more minutes for just a few questions. I know Jennifer's got the microphone.
Everyone ready? Anybody have a question? Right here, Carl.
Commissioner, thank you. The chairman last week said you talked about expiration place, and I think a subsidy of, I believe his number was $17 a ticket. Is that accurate? Can you expand on that?
Yes, it is. When you include the interest on the building, we put about $1.1 million a year on principal and interest on that building until 2022. And we also provide about $2.25 million a year for operations. And so you do the math, they have about 190,000 visitors a year. Some of those visitors actually aren't at the expiration place. They may be other places. They take some of the programs elsewhere. They count up all the people, and they say about 195 people they provided services to. You do the math, it's about $17.40-something cents, I think, per person we subsidize. If you take out the interest, it's about $12 per person we subsidize. Think about that. So you go to the expiration place, and you're paying your fee to get in. Taxpayers are picking up $17. Okay? We'd like to move this towards self-dependence or self-reliance, if you will. It's a goal we ought to have. And by the way, since you brought that up, at the zoo we spend about $10 per person, okay? Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you dropped those waste fees. It's amazing to see government drop anything that provides revenue.
Yeah.
But and the city, I believe, is going the other direction. They're going to be using fees to develop revenue streams. My question to you is, are fees, do you believe they should be oriented to what you're leveling the fee on? Or as a revenue source so that you can divide it out amongst the other departments?
I love this question. And by the way, I used to just make it very simple and say fees or taxes. But I think actually there's a better answer to that question. Those fees are designed theoretically to cover the cost of your use of government. And it should be nothing more than that. Because if it's more than that, then it does become a tax, a revenue stream. We have an issue right now with our tag office where they charge a $20 fee for a vehicle inspection. There's a lot of leftover money that goes to fund the highway patrol department. And so I'd like to challenge that a little bit. It's no longer a fee, but it becomes a tax. If there's several ways of funding the government through different revenue streams, but I think we should be really honest and say if we're charging a fee that's excessive, above and beyond the use of that to transaction, then it really is a tax. And I don't want to do that. I want to be very careful to tailor those fees to specifically what they're used for. I hope that answers your question.
When you look at TIFs and you look at items like that when they're passed, the county participates, school board participates. Is it a good idea to have the county and school board weigh in on whether they participate or not in these programs that the city of Wichita initiates?
Absolutely. His question was about TIFs. This is a tool that the city developers will ask for a tax break, basically using property taxes to improve their own property. Tax income financing, so it's called. If I could change legislation, I would say that each entity ought to give up their own cash. If they want to approve that, they should give up their own money. And if I understand correctly, the state actually backfills the school district, so they don't actually lose a dime, which I think is wrong. They want to approve that, they ought to give up the revenue. But, I don't agree with TIFs generally. I think that they're misused almost every time. I have very few exceptions to that. And I think that they're abused and used incorrectly. And if we're going to approve it, then we ought to give up the revenue. We ought to be personally invested in that. But the city starts it, and there's a default. If we don't go in there and vote on that, then it becomes approved by default. So many of these TIFs are actually not voted on by the county commission. They're just simply go into approval mode without our input. Thankfully, there's been no TIFs since I've been in county commission. I'm not sure there's going to be any. We'll see.
Jim Howell, let's